And we'll be getting started in just a minute. And for those of you online, I've been pasting in the chat the document that goes with the Sunday morning with some resources, but also the chant that we do. And people here in the room, it's on page 26. You can open a chant book. Oh, I'm sorry, it's page 30 for those of you in the room. It's the suffusion with the divine abidings chant that we often do at the center. It's actually how the Buddha suggests that we reflect on the four wholesome emotions of loving kindness and compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. And the idea, and it's related to the topic the last time I was here on the 7th of May. I'll talk about it today. I'll talk about it next week as well. But how we learn, it's a skill to recognize what's good. And I'm talking, we talk about good in terms of being out there. We see a puppy being friendly, that's good. But actually, the goodness is here, right? Recognizing goodness out there is something that happens here in the mind, in the heart, right here, not out there. And how do we recognize what's good? Well, it has an expansive, inclusive quality, almost as if it's visceral. And we know the opposite, when we're pulling in, when the heart or mind is becoming more and more constricted or more and more narrow, well, that has a felt sense too, doesn't it? And when the heart is open and inclusive, I like that word. Some of you know it, I'm sure. Magnanimous, that word. And it's kind of like greatness or largeness of heart. And it's it's a beautiful word, just that, like, because we can, and we have some evidence that makes us do this. Like we can move through the world with a limited, like, fragile, weak, but it's a story we have about our heart, like not capable of being loving, not capable of being patient, not capable of being forgiving, not capable of a sense of humor, right? And it becomes a self-fulfilling thing, just like having a magnanimous heart. I got it, closer at least. That becomes self-fulfilling too. We just even having that idea, keeping in mind the idea, I think this heart is capable of being generous and being good and seeing the good. So we're not like pretending that that's true. We're just remembering that I think it is capable of that, which is not a big step for us, right? We have evidence of our heart being capable of good, luckily. So anyway, we can do the chant from this place. So again, those of you in the room, we're on page 30. And for those online, I'll paste it there in the chat again. You can open up that document and you'll see the suffusion with the divine abidings. Sometimes we call it the 4 quarters chant. We'll do this, and then we'll meditate together for about 30 minutes or so. Now let us make the 4 boundless qualities shine forth. I will abide, pervading 1 quarter, with a mind imbued with loving kindness, likewise the 2nd, likewise the 3rd, likewise the 4th, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility, and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with compassion. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with compassion, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with gladness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with gladness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility, and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with equanimity. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility, and without ill will. And we take some time, settle in for the meditation time. The sense of being right in the middle. And appreciating the skill we have to open, to connect, and to keep remembering, to keep valuing this ability we have, the heart has, to connect and open and receive the way it is, to stay connected. And because the conditions of the present moment arise naturally, we don't have to make them happen. The sights we see, the sounds we hear, the touches we feel, the thoughts we know, all of this, in a sense, it just bursts onto the scene. touches, naturally, unavoidably touches the sensitive heart. So that's why this willingness and valuing of connecting, it's really more about understanding receptivity. Or even better, just recognizing the way that it is, because sensitivity is the way that it is. Knowing and sensitivity and the vulnerability, the exposure that comes with sensitivity and the knowing mind, the sensitive heart. So in a way, it's not so much about you or me being open or being receptive. It's really more about recognizing the way that it is. There is this sensitivity. There is this knowing here. There is this unavoidable exposure to what's coming and going. So can we embrace that? Can we trust that? Can we keep it in mind? That ceaseless movement, one experience after another touching the heart. So in a way, we're learning not to back away or deny the sensitivity. We're choosing to keep it in mind. But for many of us, it's quite a new skill. And we'll catch ourselves many, many times lost in thought, thinking about this, interpreting, analyzing, remembering, fantasizing, but being lost or identified with those mental activities. So then we just remember again and again and again, just valuing, connecting, recognizing that the sensitive heart is being touched by experience right now. And it's like this, it's being known. And we're not actually in need of picking and choosing or trying to have certain kinds of experiences. That would just be more greed, more aversion, trying to manage and control things. So the practice is more radical than that, more simple than that. It's recognizing what's being known, what the heart, the sensitive heart is sensitive to right now. And being actually curious, making the effort to be interested and curious about what else is being known, being felt. Not just the surface, and certainly not just the level of our interpretation, but in a more simple and direct and subtle way, what's being known, what's being felt, what's moving here. And learning how to stay in the rawness of this exposure to what's coming and going. And it's really helpful to rely on the embodied sense of our experience here. Almost as if the body itself, especially in the more subtle, energetic level of the body, that the body itself is a kind of sounding board for all that's moving, all that's here to be felt, to be acknowledged. And it's liberating to give ourselves permission not to have to interpret what's being experienced. But instead to be right here in the experiencing. So just do your best. Let that be good enough. Be willing to begin again and again and again. And let's continue in silence now. And when in doubt, you can just remember this phrase, only just connect. Only just connect. As a way back to the practice when you've noticed you've been distracted. Only just connect. Valuing being connected to what's coming and going. We'll be sitting for another 3 or 4 minutes. And remember, as a particular theme, we're recognizing this mind's capacity to connect, to open, and seeing it as good and wholesome. Even when we're connecting, opening to what's unpleasant, there's still something wholesome about being connected. See if you can discern that directly. And take a little time, move your body, stretch if you need to so that you can sit comfortably. And a big welcome. Anybody here in the room for the first time? And people online? Excuse me, one sec. Getting that I was all wired up. So I want to thank Wynn Fricky, my spouse, and also Common Ground's co-founder, who taught last Sunday. And Wynn and I are heading to New Jersey to be with her older mother, do some caretaking this week. So next Sunday, I'll be here, but I'll be on a screen. For those of you here in person, you can come in person if you want, and be in community. But you could just join the Zoom community, or just go. You can always go to Common Ground's YouTube channel, both at real time, because it's there live streaming, but also anytime later, it's up there at our YouTube channel if you ever want to watch the program at another time. Good. And then 2 weeks ago, and then again today, as I mentioned, also next Sunday, maybe one more Sunday after that, I'll continue this topic of recognizing the good, and to think of that as an actual skill set. It's not the only skill set we want, right? But it is a, I think, essential skill set. And not just like every once in a while, but all the time, we want to be accessing that skill. Oh, this is good. This is wholesome. This is beautiful. Just like we're already, hopefully, have some skill at recognizing what's unwholesome, certainly in other people. Generally, that one's on steroids, in a way that's not actually that wholesome sometimes, right? Because we use that idea, oh, this is wrong with this person, or this is wrong with the world, as something to fix on. We like that identity of, it's almost like a doomsayer identity. And we just keep regenerating, finding things to feel, to catastrophize about. Oh yeah, this is broken here, this sucks over here, this is bad. So it's really an important counterweight to be able to, at any moment, it'd be nice if we had 3 or 4 close friends, and they would try to look for the right moment where they'd say, name something good right here and now. And then we'd have to, regardless of our mood, regardless of our circumstance, we'd be compelled to recognize, oh yeah, there's good here too. There's wholesome, the potential, the capacity for wholesomeness and beauty and goodness here. Because that interrupts a very, like I'm saying, a very, like a vortex we have for our mind of just being in the negative. Griping, the tirades, the rants. I mentioned last week, or not last week, but 2 weeks ago when I taught this first in the series of talks on seeing the good or recognizing the good, that wouldn't it be nice if we had homework, this was 2 weeks ago, so some of you maybe did the homework, to sing a song of gratitude, or write a poem of gratitude, or write an essay, or give a talk to a friend about what you're grateful for. And I mentioned that the Buddha, in one of his talks way back when, described topics of conversation with your friends that are wholesome and unwholesome. And this is one of the wholesome things to talk about. It's inspiring for us to talk together about what is good. So you could find a way to do that, whether you write a song or a poem or an essay, or you just talk to your friend, or you talk to yourself before you go to bed. Okay, honey, what was good today? How did this sensitive mind, heart, bump up, touch, connect with what is truly good, uplifting, where we feel that enlargement, magnanimity of the heart. Getting better. I worked on it this morning, by the way. Yeah, and really sense this heart that doesn't need to be protected, enclosed, defended, armored. And we're not asking that the world be a different place. The world is the way that it is. We have to deal with the world we live in. And obviously there's meanness and ignorance, injustice. There's a lot that is imperfect in our world. But does that mean that with my heart, it has to be imperfect? You know, it has to be limited because the world is limited. And this is part of our meditative journey. So it's both out in daily life, but in a sense, in our meditation practice, where conditions are a little more protected, quieter, you know, generally when we pick a time and a place to do our meditation practice and a posture, we're coming up with a posture and a place and a time of the day where the conditions are relatively comfortable and protected. We're not doing this at the Mall of America or on the side of the freeway, right? We're really in whatever that place is for us, that time and the posture that works best for us. And then we're exploring, like, in these relatively wholesome, protected conditions, will the heart be willing to be open in this more unconditioned way, not holding back, not acting out some fear, not acting out some neediness or acting out some controlling tendency, but just inclusive and open and loving and sensitive and interested, not neurotic. Right? So, and what we call a good sit is a sit where the wisdom in the mind recognizes to a greater degree the heart's capacity, the mind's capacity to be open, enlarged, expanded, not constricted. So we call that even if it's a temporary experience, we call that a liberated mind, or a mind that is released of its limitations, released of what normally binds or bounds up the heart, the mind. And we know this happens because all day long we're moving along that continuum, a mind that's is bound up and constricted and tight, and a mind that's at least less bound up, less constricted, less tight, more open, more spacious, more allowing, and more connected. And we may initially, without a lot of spiritual and meditative experience, assume that when the heart is in its more open state, then I must be more disconnected from the wild, imperfect world that I live in. But actually, you'll find in your own direct experience, meditative experience, it's the opposite. The only place and way to experience what we call openness, being open, being inclusive, is right here, not in a different place. But, we might go to a nice place, like a beautiful meadow or your place you meditate, right, to realize that the heart does have that capacity to open, totally appropriate. But the openness itself, that capacity, isn't actually dependent on those favorable conditions, even though it's a useful support to build the confidence of what our heart is capable of doing. Being open, being inclusive, not being afraid, not neurotically trying to control and fix, and even neurotically categorize our experience, or neurotically interpret to ourselves, explain to ourselves what's happening to me. Like, it's not even that, some of that activity may be there, but the mind isn't pushed around by thoughts, neurotic or not thoughts, or, wholesome thoughts, but just isn't contained or dependent on mental activity. So we're not neurotically afraid of mental activity either. That, like, openness isn't defined by not having thought. It's by not the mind, the heart, the experience of the mind and heart, let's say, not being constricted by thought, whatever thoughts, wholesome or unwholesome. And that's a real insight for us, to see that whatever this is, the mind, the heart, it isn't contained by what is being known, including negative thinking. But that's a very deep habit, is when we do have negative, heavy, constricted thinking, emotions, we imagine wrongly that the heart, the mind, or who I am is somehow defined by or constricted by those negative thoughts and emotions. Isn't that how we experience negative emotions? We feel, in a sense, imprisoned, oppressed by the negativity of our perspective, our ideas, our emotions. We live inside of them. And what we're doing by like these talks and your work with some of this information that I'm conveying in these talks of recognizing the good, seeing the good. But remember what I said at the beginning. We may use what we call out there, like seeing a friendly puppy or a beautiful flower or two people getting along, But the goodness that we sense isn't those two people getting along. The goodness we sense is right here. It was just a convenience to notice two people being really friendly with each other, and that reminded the heart, something like, I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to be constricted. I can be open, right? So that's, in a sense, part of our way to relate to this world of conditions of experience. It's like medicine. And our job is to use our experiences, internal and externally, internal and external experiences, as a kind of medicine for opening the heart. So like even now, those of you online, those of you in the room, we could be using this experience to be reinforcing a sense of constriction and tightness, like, I can't believe, I'm this number of years old, and I started my practice when I was so old, and I'm never going to get this. I'm always going to be one of these neurotic, tight people, right? And so you could be basically complaining, doing that tirade, that rant to yourself about not good, never been good, never will be good, some version of that. And then you will have the experience you're having. And then if there's any wisdom, it will ask kindly, well, how's that working for you, or for me? Not very well. But there's another way to be relating to the exact same experience, which is, it's nice to be here. It's nice to be here with other people who are interested in recognizing what's good. It's nice to be reminded to recognize what's good. It's good to be reminded, already there's goodness. It's just like doing the practice. That's actually the way to listen to Dharma talks. I don't know if people know, but generally when someone's talking about the Buddhist teachings, we refer to them as Dharma talks. Dharma or Dhamma is that word, means it has sort of different uses, but the way it is and the teachings that point to the way it is and the Buddhist teachings, those are kind of the three common ways that word is used. So, when we're here in Dharma talks, the way to be here in a Dharma talk isn't to try to remember what the person is saying, but to just, not everything, but some of what's being said can be directly turned into practice, even as we're listening. Even as, whether your eyes are open or closed, doesn't matter. We can be sensing here the good. And what I wanted to emphasize today in this series of talks on recognizing the good is something that's a little more subtle, but is so available. And I mentioned it several times in the guided instructions during the meditation time, just connect. Simply connect. Only just connect. So finding, a few words for yourself, that's an invitation to recognize this is a way back to what is good, to aligning with what is good. Only just connect. And in a sense, I think appropriate sense, to have that appropriate fear, or that, maybe don't use the word fear, maybe use the word concern, just because generally we use the word fear to refer to that constriction in the heart. So, because there can be something similar to fear that's not constricting, like concern, like a wholesome concern can be part of opening, like, oh yeah, just like we're interested in connecting, we have an appropriate concern for all the little and bigger ways the mind, the habits of the mind justify not connecting, being disconnected, being numb, being in denial, turning away, not wanting to see, not wanting to feel. I mean, it is endemic in our culture, in our minds, right? I mean, just take a moment, each of us, let's take a moment and just reflect on our heart's habits of disconnecting, and the places in the life where we choose to disconnect. Like for some of you, it's like when you're in traffic, you're driving, it's like, I need the radio on. Or I would feel lost or a podcast or whatever you might do, because I hate that transition between where I am and the time I have to take to get where I'm going. I just don't want to be there. As opposed to, like for some of you who commute regularly, it turns out to be a lot of your life. So it's an interesting, mostly unconscious choice to decide, I just don't want to be me for this, when you add up 2 hours a day, I mean, it's not that much for most of you, but 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, 40, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of this life. And it's not just like we're not there when we're driving, we're not there when we're brushing our teeth, and are we really there when we're washing dishes or putting them in the dishwasher? And even a lot of our loved, our close relationships, we're in that place in the relationship, we're not really there when we're there interacting with the person. We're just on autopilot. When we walk from the car to wherever we're going, we're not really there. So this only just connect as a reminder, a very powerful reminder, and especially, and this is actually goes right to the heart of this training that I'm encouraging us all to take up, is connecting, aligning that only just connect, like this capacity for my heart to connect with joy. And all my habits of not connecting with feeling the opposite of joy, feeling that alienation, that being cut off from life energy, dead. The Buddha even says this, as if already dead. Negligence, which is, appamada is the Pali word, negligence, not being concerned about being open, not valuing connecting and being open, is as if already dead. Because we're just habits acting themselves out, and a lot of them not very wholesome. So thinking about those places where the stronger habit in our mind is to be somewhat or a lot disconnected, somewhat or a lot on autopilot, and then reimagining those places. And it's good to do that now to some degree, because you'll plant the seed, like if it's brushing your teeth, like really being there for the moment the arm is stretching and reaching for the toothbrush, and hearing the sound of the water coming out of the faucet and splashing in the sink, and the minty smell of the toothpaste or whatever. Just, it's not, no one's making the argument that it's pleasurable. The argument, the point is, being connected is a cause for joy, even if what we're connected to is picking up our dog poop after our dog poops, right? So something unpleasant, but it's still joyful to be connected with that experience, even if it's unpleasant, and it's constricting to be disconnected from it. It's deadening to be disconnected, and it's enlivening to be connected, regardless of what's happening. But you don't have to believe me, right? We want to check this out for ourselves. And it's really, it just goes to the most pragmatic way to be living a life, which is just to be curious about, well, what sets joy in motion? How do I actually connect with joy? How do I plant seeds for joy? If we live in a lawful universe where the arising here of joy and the arising here of alienation and disconnection and constriction, if that's a lawful arising, it happens because of causes and conditions, well then of course I'm going to want to be attuned to that. And this is part of why only just connect is the cause for so much joy. Because what blossoms out of that capacity we have to connect is, at least in the way the Buddha describes it, the most liberating and joyful thing, which is the deepening of understanding. So as nice as it is to be loved and to love unconditionally, in those moments when that heart of kindness and compassion is really uncontrived and quite expanded and beautiful, the deepening of understanding, like really understanding what this is, which allows us to engage, to show up in more creative and nimble ways. That deepening of understanding is experienced as the deepest kind, most subtle and deepest kind of joy or happiness. And you see it fits with the deepest, most painful existential suffering is the suffering of disconnection and alienation. Imagining, sort of the oh poor me, all alone in a dark room, or something like that, right? We have our own existential nightmare that we're pretty busy running from. And the thing is, running from it is what makes and reinforces the nightmare, of course, because what we run from, what we have to hide from, we only have to run and hide from something that's real and me, right? So, but anyway, that's sort of a side, something we can keep on the side. But what I really want us to sense is that the opening process itself, the connecting process itself, it reveals, in Buddhism we call it onward leading, because it reveals what to do with our life. Like it reveals what we say in Buddhism, the difference between what's wholesome and unwholesome. All of a sudden, a kind of earthy wisdom starts to gradually come online where all day long, the heart, the sensitive heart, is able to discern and sense what's helpful and not helpful, what's healthy and not healthy, what's wholesome and not wholesome. And what we mean by that is like, what is onward leading to stressful, constricted states for me and others, and what's onward leading to states of more and more release, more and more freedom for myself and others. How can I contribute? How am I able to contribute to healing? How am I contributing to all of the dis-ease, all the stress, the hate, the greed, the disconnection, the delusion, right? And that earthy wisdom, you could even use, it's a funny word for us these days, morality. But we could even use that word like the birth of morality, knowing the difference between wholesome and unwholesome, skillful and unskillful. And that is liberating to be able to, because now we're no longer helpless. Oh. So we're not doing what's wholesome because it's wholesome. The heart gravitates towards the wholesome because it's onward leading to release. And it avoids, refrains from the unwholesome because it itself is constricting and heavy and burdensome. So it's not about pleasing some external Santa Claus or impressing our friends even though that is how we're often conditioned. A lot of our initial morality, when we think about ourselves, as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, is we wanted to make our parents happy. Or, depending on how you were conditioned, you wanted to make your parents unhappy. But that sort of drove a lot, and then it was our teachers, maybe our friends. And that sort of stood in. We wanted to be an upstanding citizen. We wanted to be seen as being an upstanding citizen. But real morality, that's not real morality, that's just trying to fit in. I mean, it does some good. I'm not saying it doesn't do any good. But real morality is when it's not externally dependent. It really is arising here in the heart, mind. And it's really that sense, that deeper sense of what is onward leading and what is leading onward to hell, hellish states, contracted states. And all of that depends on this only just connect. I don't know if I mentioned it 2 weeks ago, but it's like collecting data. How does life work? What leads, so when I am in that place of acting out anger and hate, but I'm still valuing the only just connect. So then the heart connects to what it's like to be hateful. And it's really liberating because wisdom sees, oh yeah, this is what leads to hell. This is not the way. That's what leads to the letting go of the identification with the hate, is seeing that it's not onward leading. Same thing with forgiveness. The Buddha, in Buddhism, there are some places where it's talked about, but because it's sort of built in, like why forgive? Because not forgiving is not onward leading. Now it doesn't mean we can always forgive or that we're ready to forgive, but we want to recognize like those places in our lives where we can't forgive. Oh no, I can't go there. But you're not going there, you're not going to forgive that person. It's not like a free gift to that person. It's a generous gift to yourself. What we're recognizing, in those places of forgiveness is how my unwillingness to forgive is a dead weight here. Do I want to hold that dead weight? Is there a way to begin to let go of that dead weight of resentment? Right? And forgiving doesn't mean exposing ourselves to somebody that could cause us harm. It just means I don't want to be that resentful person anymore. So I'm going to forgive you. I'm going to see that my hating you doesn't really add anything here, doesn't really contribute anything, doesn't lead to my well-being or your well-being. And my forgiving you doesn't mean that I'm forgetting that what you did caused harm, or doesn't mean that I don't think that you have to be able to recognize what you did caused harm. It just means what we're doing is we're realizing that me throwing you out of my heart, I may have to throw you out of my life, like stay away from you, but I don't have to have this knot, this constriction in my heart. And so when we forgive, we're doing it because it's wise right here. It's onward leading right here. And no one has to tell us that. We can sense that ourselves. Oh yeah, this is the right thing to do. I don't have to hold on to this not forgiving him or her or them. Right? I can let that unfold. And that feels right. That feels onward leading. And that's the great thing about this only just connect, is it really it's an empowerment. Like, oh, I'm living a life where I can be connected, I can be open, I can be sensitive. And in being open and sensitive, I learn how to participate in a way, regardless of my external conditions, my circumstances, which may be horrific sometimes, right? But regardless of our setup in our life, our conditions, there's a way for this heart to connect in a way that's liberating. And there's a way for my heart to avoid connecting in a way that's adding more entanglement, more suffering. And that is an intense responsibility initially. Like, oh, we may not be able to control my health, my social situation, where I live, how I'm being treated. There's a lot we don't control. It's already in motion. It's already, in a sense, the way that it is. It's still changing, but, a lot's in motion right now. And I just have to, all that's in motion and presenting itself as this moment, that's already in play. And that's arising out of the past, and so it's like this for me right now. And that we have to submit to because it's already this way for each of us. But my choice to connect, that's a powerful way to show up in the moment versus all the mostly unconscious habits to choose to not connect, to be lost in thought or thought about what's happening. So I just encourage folks to just see that as a homework assignment, to just connect and to really see that as something essentially good. And remember, only just connect doesn't mean the attention goes to the most painful thing. We can connect to the sound of the blower. We can connect to anything in the moment, right? So what we're doing is valuing the capacity to connect. And what else can the heart connect with? What else can the heart open to? What else can the heart allow? And just see where that leads. See how that's onward leading. What opens up from that. And it's really against the stream, so don't be surprised by some pushback. You could experiment with simple things like put your fork down in the middle of the meal and then just remember, oh yeah, only just connect. And it doesn't mean when you pick your fork back up, you're giving up the only just connect. But you're just creating a simpler moment by not shoveling food in our mouths, and just stop for a moment and just, oh yeah, connect. Having been eating feels like this. Okay, can I continue to respect, value the only just connect even as I continue eating? Or stopping a show in the middle, a TV show, Just pause for a moment and just connect. And conversations with friends, just really, even the pause between thoughts, just like really take advantage of that. Oh yeah, I can connect here. I can remember there's this to open to feel into, to allow, to value this capacity to connect. And remember, you don't have to interpret to yourself why that's useful. It's more direct sensing that it is useful, that it is good, essentially good. And you can feel good about that goodness. That's that expansive thing. There's a feedback mechanism right there. Just valuing the only just connect. So I see the kids are ready to come in. Maybe I'll just make a couple of announcements before we let the kids in. So there's going to be a day-long retreat on May 27th. That's next Saturday. Shelley Graff, the other guiding teacher here at the center, will be leading that. We're going to have a potluck on June 18th, a little bit of ways, but remember that. And the kids program will be that weekend or that Sunday too. But otherwise, this is the last children's program until next September. So the teachers, Joe and Madeline, are going to take the summer off like we always do with our youth program. But we will have child care that Sunday, the 18th, with the potluck. And that's, of course, optional. You're welcome to come and just leave and not stay for the potluck. And let's see, lots of other things coming up. We're looking for some tech volunteers, both for our audio and graphic artists and website development. So if you've got some skills that you'd like to donate to the center, let Robin in the office know. And then the last thing is I'll be teaching the Divine Abodes for Buddhist studies this summer, the 4 beautiful qualities of the heart: loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. 8 Mondays, June 12th through the 31st. And Stacy McClendon and I are going to teach an intro class beginning on June 6th. 6 Tuesday nights, June 6th. So join in for any of those that make sense. So I'm going to pass the Zoom community on to Lucy for those of you who want to stay for small group discussions. Lucy will introduce those for you. Those in the room, please stay for a song with the youth children, and we'll sing together and then be done. Okay, Lucy, I'm going to make you host here. And Lucy, when you are host, if you would shut off the live stream, that would be great. Bye to all of you online.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone who's staying. Just give folks a couple minutes. Welcome to the small groups of Common Ground. Change my view to the